The Galactic Cadet Academy of Voss Prime had seen many unusual species pass through its hallowed corridors. Ashari with their bioluminescent scales. Turvek with their 4 sets of arms folded in perpetual calculation. Even the rare Meldrin, whose crystalline bodies chimed softly whenever they moved. But in all its 400-year history, the Academy had never enrolled a human. Until Mara Ellison walked through the front gate with a duffel bag, a travel-worn jacket, and a smile that somehow managed to be both warm and completely unreadable. Professor Dinara, a tall, silver-mantled Ashari who had taught xenopsychology for 60 years, watched the human settle into her seat in the 3rd row. Mara had brown hair pulled into a loose knot, dark eyes that moved quickly across the room cataloging everything, and the unsettling tendency to hold completely still when she was thinking. Like a predator, some cadets had whispered. Like something that had learned patience over a very long evolutionary road. The other cadets kept a careful distance. Dinara had seen this before, the social cold shoulder given to any strange new species. It usually resolved itself. But the other faculty had concerns. Humans, the report said, were apex predators from a death world. They ate meat. They had a pain tolerance that bordered on pathological. They formed emotional bonds with other apex predators and kept them in their homes as pets. They were, by most measurable standards, terrifying. And yet Mara Ellison sat in the 3rd row, reviewing her interstellar navigation notes, completely unbothered by the fact that no one would sit within 2 seats of her. Professor Dinara decided, quietly, that something needed to be done. The idea came from Professor Alt, a brusque Turvek with a specialty in behavioral integration. Introduce a Vethrak cub, he said. During the faculty meeting, all 4 arms folded. Young ones are skittish, hostile, completely unpredictable. They read the emotional energy of a room and amplify it. If she's carrying the anxiety I think she is, beneath that composed exterior, the cub will expose it. The class will see she's as unsettled as anyone. It normalizes her. Brings her down to their level. Professor Dinara looked at him for a long moment. And if she isn't anxious? Alt waved 2 of his arms dismissively. Then we learned something interesting. The Vethrak were apex ambush predators native to the forests of Keth, quadrupedal, covered in dark scales that shifted color with their mood, with 6-inch retractable claws and a low subsonic growl that triggered prey flight responses in most species at a cellular level. Even the cubs had a reputation. Vethrak young were brought to behavioral studies only as a last resort, because they had a documented tendency to reduce cadets to incoherent, trembling wrecks. The cub they acquired, 7 months old, approximately the size of a large wolf, was named Kale Vera, after the Keth Forest Ranger Station where he'd been born. He'd been raised in captivity, which made him slightly less likely to draw blood. Slightly. The morning of the demonstration, Dinara introduced the exercise as a standard behavioral response assessment. She did not mention the Vethrak. She simply told the cadets to remain calm and observe. The crate was brought in by 2 handlers wearing protective gauntlets. The room went still. Even before the crate was opened, cadets began reacting, Ashari scales paling toward white, Turvek arms locking tight against their torsos, a Meldrin in the back row chiming in high-pitched alarm. The subsonic rumble coming from inside the crate was doing its biological work, dragging at every prey instinct in the room. Mara Ellison looked up from her datapad. She tilted her head. The crate opened. Kale Vera emerged slowly, scales cycling from deep black to an agitated red-orange, claws clicking against the floor. He was beautiful in the way that very dangerous things are beautiful, precise, coiled, effortlessly lethal. His head swung across the room, reading every emotional signal in the space. Cadets pressed back into their seats. Someone made a sound that was almost a whimper. Kale's eyes, 6 of them, arranged in 2 vertical rows, fixed on the human in the 3rd row. The one who wasn't moving. The one who wasn't afraid. Mara set her datapad down. She had gone very still in the particular way she sometimes did, not frozen, not tense, just quiet in her body, the way deep water is quiet. She was watching Kale with an expression that Dinara, studying her, could only describe as interested. Kale took one step toward her. Then another. His scales shifted, the red-orange bleeding into something more uncertain. Amber. Then a pale, curious gold. He patted down the aisle between the seats. Cadets shrank away from him on either side. He stopped in front of Mara Ellison. For 3 full seconds, they looked at each other. Then Mara reached out, slowly, palm up, knuckles first, and let him smell her hand. Every handler in the room went rigid. Professor Dinara stopped breathing. Kale sniffed. His scales flickered through a rapid sequence of colors that the behavioral chart on Dinara's desk identified as curious, uncertain, interested, reassured. His claws retracted, one set at a time. The subsonic growl faded. And then, in a movement that absolutely no one in that room was prepared for, the Vethrak cub put his enormous dark head in Mara Ellison's lap and made a sound like rolling thunder that was, unmistakably, a purr. Mara scratched behind the ridge above his second set of eyes without hesitation. He pressed into her hand. The room was so silent that the gentle rasp of scales against the fabric of Mara's uniform was clearly audible. "Huh," Mara said softly, mostly to Kale. "Hi there. You're just a baby, aren't you? Big scary baby." Kale's tail, 4 feet long and capable of breaking bone, curled loosely around her ankle. His scales had settled into a deep, contented blue. Professor Dinara looked at Professor Alt's report on her desk, then at the scene in front of her, then slowly back at the report. She made a small notation, hypothesis, incorrect. Afterward, after Kale had been coaxed back into his crate with enormous reluctance and much grumbling, a cadet named Thessan, an Ashari, finally dared to ask. "How did you do that?" Mara looked up. "Do what?" "Not be afraid." Thessan's scales were still faintly pale. "He walked straight toward you." His growl was, Thessan shuddered. "It was in my bones." "How were you not affected?" Mara considered this for a moment with genuine thoughtfulness, the way she considered most things. "I don't know," she said honestly. "He just looked." She paused, searching for the word. "Lonely. And curious. Like he wanted to figure out what I was." She glanced at the door where the handlers had taken Kale. "We have animals back home that could kill us without trying," she added. "Big ones. Dangerous ones. You just learn to read them. And most of the time, if something dangerous is coming toward you without attacking, it isn't trying to attack. It's trying to understand." A small shrug. "I figured the worst case, he bites me and I get medical treatment. The more likely case." She smiled, a little. "He just wanted to know if I was interesting." Thessan stared at her. "That is," Thessan said, very carefully, "the most terrifying reasoning I have ever heard." Mara looked genuinely puzzled. "Is it?" Professor Dinara wrote up her report that evening. Finding: the human cadet demonstrated no measurable pre-response to Vethrak subsonic stimuli. Behavioral profile suggests this is not the result of physiological difference but of cognitive reframing. Threat is assessed and then consciously reclassified as information. The subject's subsequent interaction with the Vethrak cub produced the most rapid calming response ever recorded in a non-Keth native handler. She paused, then added one final line. "Recommend that Cadet Ellison be given unrestricted access to the Behavioral Studies Wing. For the benefit of the animals." 3 weeks later, Mara had a standing arrangement to visit Kale Vera twice a week. He could be heard purring from 2 hallways away whenever she arrived. The other cadets had started sitting closer to Mara in class. Not because she was less strange, but because, as Thessan had eventually reasoned aloud, if the Vethrak isn't scared of her, maybe we don't need to be either. And somehow, without trying, Mara Ellison had done the thing the Academy had spent years attempting with careful programming and structured integration workshops. She had simply been herself, curious, calm, and completely unimpressed by the things that were supposed to be terrifying. The galaxy, it turned out, had never met anything quite like that before. It was still catching up.